Memory, it's not what most people think it is. We tend to imagine it like a dusty filing cabinet in the back of our minds, facts and dates, places and names, archived neatly and retrieved when necessary. But that model is not only inadequate, it's dangerous. Memory is not passive, it's not neutral, it's deeply emotional, and it's profoundly shaped by meaning, by the weight of experience. You don't remember what happened on a random Tuesday 3 years ago, but you remember the night someone raised their voice at you in anger, or the moment they looked at you with disappointment, or the second you were embraced when the world felt like it was collapsing. Why? Because those events carried emotional voltage, they mattered, they stuck to your soul. Women, again, generally speaking, are often more attuned to this emotional pattern recognition. There's a complexity in how they remember, not because it's about clinging to the past, but because it's about carrying forward the truth of an experience. Their memories are not just about what happened. They're about what it meant. You can say the same words to two different people and have one forget it the next day while the other holds it forever. Why? Because the second person was feeling in that moment. When she was open, when she was vulnerable, that's when memory carves itself deep into the psyche. It's not just a recording, it's a scar or maybe even a tattoo. I've seen this in therapy sessions again and again. A woman will recall in vivid detail something her partner said years ago, a phrase he doesn't even remember, but she does, not because she's obsessed or bitter, but because in that moment something shifted inside her. And what she remembers is not just the words, but how she felt, the disconnection, the dismissal, the validation or lack thereof. It's the same mechanism that makes us remember childhood pain so sharply. Not the logistics, but the feelings, the shame, the fear, the loneliness. These things are sticky, and when someone close to you inflicts them, even unintentionally, it's almost impossible to forget, because our emotional brains don't deal in time the way our rational brains do. So when you think she's over it, when you think she's forgotten, understand this, she might not even talk about it. She may have moved on behaviorally, functionally, socially, but the memory is still there. Because her nervous system encoded it, her emotions encoded it, and those memories are not passive. They are active forces in how she now approaches trust, connection, intimacy. This is the architecture of the human experience. And to disregard it is to walk blindly through relationships, through life, believing that your actions are isolated events instead of ripples that spread long after the moment has passed. She remembers more than you realize, not because she wants to, but because the depth of what she felt didn't give her a choice. What she remembers, that is the map to what she felt. Memory, especially emotional memory, doesn't preserve everything. It's selective, and it selects based on meaning. What stood out to her wasn't random, it was meaningful, and meaning is synonymous with feeling. People say things like, "It was such a small thing, why is she still bringing it up?" But the truth is, it wasn't small to her. It may have looked insignificant to you. Maybe it was just a 5-second interaction. Maybe it was a glance, a word, a tone. But in that moment, something inside her registered, something in her shifted. What she remembers is a direct reflection of how deeply something touched her emotionally, positively or negatively. If she remembers the night you didn't call when you said you would, it's not because she's keeping score. It's because in that silence she felt unimportant. She felt discarded, forgotten. If she remembers the time you defended her in front of your friends, it's because she felt safe, valued, seen. That's the core of it. What she remembers is a map of what she experienced on the inside, not what you think you did or didn't do. We vastly underestimate the emotional intelligence encoded in memory. When a person, especially someone emotionally attuned, holds on to certain moments, they're not doing it to guilt, trip anyone. They're doing it because that moment helped define a piece of their internal reality. It set a precedent, it revealed your character, or at least how it appeared in that context. And character is not measured in grand gestures. It's revealed in how you behave when the world isn't watching, when nothing's at stake, when she's vulnerable and hoping you'll understand without needing to be told. This is why she remembers the sigh of frustration when she tried to open up about her day, or the way you looked at your phone instead of her eyes during dinner. because in that moment your actions confirmed a feeling she already feared. And fear mixed with disappointment, that gets remembered, like the first time a child realizes their parent won't always protect them. You don't forget that kind of moment. It becomes embedded. On the other hand, she also remembers when you held space for her tears. When you listened, not to fix, but to understand, when you stayed instead of leaving, those memories also reveal what she felt: safety, connection, respect. So memory isn't just a record of time, it's a reflection of emotional truth. And that's why you should pay attention to what she remembers, because that's where the real story is. That's where her experience lives, not in what you think happened, but in what she felt happened. Memory in that way is a mirror, and if you're brave enough, you'll look into that mirror and ask yourself, what did I make her feel that she had no choice but to remember? We like to believe that life is made up of milestones, the big, flashy events. The anniversaries, the vacations, the fights, the makeups, and yes, those moments do stand out. But the fabric of a relationship, of any meaningful connection, isn't woven in the dramatic scenes. It's built, quietly and almost imperceptibly, in the casual moments. The in-betweens, and here's the catch, those moments aren't actually casual at all. They just feel that way to the one who's not paying attention. You're sitting at the table, scrolling through your phone while she's talking. Seems harmless, right? Just a moment, but it lands, it registers, and not in her logical brain. In her emotional core, what she hears is, this isn't important, you aren't important right now, and maybe you didn't mean it that way. Maybe your intent was innocent, but the impact, that is what writes the memory. The problem is that most men, and many people in general, walk through these casual moments like they're meaningless, but they're not. These are the bricks of the house you're building, and whether that house becomes a home or a ruin depends on how consciously you handle them. A slight delay before responding, a sarcastic tone, an absent-minded nod instead of eye contact. These are the places where respect either lives or dies. Trust isn't built in grand apologies or romantic gestures. It's built when you choose to be present when you could have been distracted, when you lean in instead of brushing off. That's when the emotional foundation is laid. Think of it like this. Every time you're in a casual moment, you are writing a line in the story she'll one day tell herself about who you were, about how you loved, about whether she felt cherished or tolerated, and that story, that's what stays long after the moments pass. And you know, memory doesn't discriminate between moments you thought mattered and the ones you thought didn't. It only captures what moved the heart. A thoughtless joke, a dismissive glance, or an off-hand comment can live inside someone for years, not because it was monumental, but because it came during a time when she needed you to be gentle, and instead you were careless. It works the other way too, the way you held her hand when she was anxious, the time you brought her something small, not for a reason, but just because, the moment you stopped to listen when you didn't have to. She remembers these, not because they were planned, but because they revealed something real. This is the great misunderstanding. Casual to you doesn't mean casual to her, because people don't remember what you meant. They remember how you made them feel. And feelings, especially in quiet moments, are amplified. So many relationships fall apart not in loud fights, but in the slow erosion of these moments, not because of one big mistake, but because of 100 small ones. Tiny cuts that go unnoticed until it's too late. You must realize there is no such thing as a neutral interaction in a relationship. You're either building intimacy or creating distance. Every word, every silence, every shrug, every smile, it's all part of the equation. And when you start to understand that, you stop taking moments for granted, you begin to live more consciously, you begin to love more responsibly, because she remembers, and the so-called casual moments are often the ones she remembers most. It's a harsh truth, but one you need to come to terms with if you ever want to grow into someone worthy of real love. Pain lasts longer than joy. You can give someone 100 good days and yet one bad one careless word, one selfish act, one moment of betrayal can echo louder than all the rest. Why is that? Because human beings are biologically and psychologically wired to remember pain more vividly. That's not dysfunction, that's survival. Pain teaches, pain warns, it demands our attention. When something wounds us, especially emotionally, it triggers a defensive architecture inside the psyche. The nervous system doesn't just log the pain as an isolated event. It marks it as important, and what's important becomes unforgettable, particularly in relationships, especially in love. Now think about this in the context of a woman who gave you her trust, her openness, her heart. Maybe she laughed with you, dreamed with you, built plans for a future she imagined would be safe in your hands, and then something happened. Maybe you didn't even think it was a big deal. Maybe you were stressed or tired or distracted. You said something sharp. You dismissed something meaningful. You disappeared emotionally when she needed you most. To you, it may have been a bad moment. But to her, it was a crack in the foundation. It meant something, because her pain in that moment was louder than any joy you gave her before. You can't pick what people remember. You don't get to erase their hurt just because it inconveniences your ego. We all want to be remembered for the good, the laughs, the affection, the small kindnesses, but that's not how memory works. Pain anchors itself. It insists on being heard, and the deeper the love was, the more permanent the wound becomes when that love is violated, even slightly. We tend to underestimate the weight of disappointment. It doesn't explode like anger or retreat like fear. It seeps quietly, slowly, like a slow bleed inside the heart, and once it sets in, it doesn't just fade with time. It integrates, it becomes part of the emotional history a person carries forward into the next conversation, the next relationship, the next time they try to trust. Joy, on the other hand, while beautiful, is fleeting by design. It lifts us, it energizes, but it doesn't always last, and that's not to say joy is meaningless, quite the opposite, but it requires repetition, nurturing, a constant recommitment. Pain needs only one moment. One mistake, one fracture, and it lasts. So when she remembers the pain more than the good times, don't accuse her of being negative. Recognize that her memory isn't broken. It's honest. She's not dwelling. She's surviving. She's trying to understand how someone she cared about allowed her to feel that exposed, that abandoned, that small, and she remembers, not because she's holding a grudge, but because the wound still speaks. This is why your responsibility in love is so profound. You can't afford to be reckless. You can't throw words like knives and expect her to forget the cut. You can't disappear emotionally and think your earlier presence will make up for it. Because the mind may try to forgive, but the body, the heart, the nervous system it remembers, the shelf life of pain isn't fair, but it's real. And the only way to counterbalance that is to live with such consistency, such compassion, such awareness that your presence becomes a refuge, not a trigger. You must become someone whose love doesn't create pain in the first place. Because once it does, that pain takes root, and roots, once deep enough, are almost impossible to pull out. The question we rarely ask ourselves, because it's too uncomfortable, too confrontational, is this: when she looks back on me, what will she remember? Not what do I want her to remember, but what will actually stay with her when I'm gone, when the silence settles, when the emotion has cooled and only the truth remains. That question should haunt you a little. It should wake you up, because most people don't realize they are always being remembered. Every moment, every decision, every word, every silence. You are writing your legacy in someone else's mind, and it's happening now, not years from now. There is no delay. There is only the now and the permanent imprint of how you show up in it. We often live with this dangerous illusion that we'll get to the important parts later, that we'll be kind tomorrow, that will be consistent once we're less stressed, that will say the right thing next time, but now becomes memory, immediately. There's no buffer, and when you look at it like that, suddenly, every moment demands more responsibility. Being someone worth being remembered by isn't about putting on a performance. It's not about being perfect. that's unsustainable and inauthentic. It's about striving to be honest, intentional, present, and accountable in the little ways, especially when no one's applauding you for it. Because what defines you in someone's heart isn't what you do when it's easy, it's what you do when it's hard, when you're angry, when you're tired, when you feel like withdrawing. That's when your character is revealed. And don't forget, memory is not neutral. It doesn't catalog everything equally. It clings to what matters most. So when you make her feel seen, she remembers. When you make her feel like a burden, she remembers. When you choose patience over frustration, love over pride, gentleness over power, she remembers. So the call here is brutal but necessary. Earn her memory. Don't just hope to be remembered fondly, deserve it. Let your actions align with your values, not your impulses. Let your words carry weight, not convenience. Let your presence be a source of grounding, not confusion, because one day, all that will remain of you in her world may be a series of memories. And it's your job, your sacred task, to make sure those memories bring peace, not pain, that they bring strength, not scars. Be someone she thinks of not with regret, but with gratitude. Someone she remembers not because of what you destroyed, but because of what you built, how you held space, how you stayed when others left. Not because you were extraordinary in a worldly sense, but because you were true. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens through daily, deliberate choice, through the slow, patient discipline of becoming someone who lives with such emotional integrity that even your absence carries respect. Because even when you're gone, she remembers, and you ought to live in a way that makes that memory a blessing, not a burden. So now you know she remembers, not in fragments, but in feeling, not just the big declarations or the polished moments, but the ones you didn't even think twice about. Because memory isn't a scoreboard, it's a mirror, and what it reflects back isn't just what you did, but who you were while you did it. You want to be a man, then understand this, you leave a mark. Whether you choose to or not, you leave a mark. And that mark lives in someone else's story, maybe for years, maybe for a lifetime. So don't dismiss your impact. Don't act like your words evaporate when the conversation ends or that your silence goes unnoticed. You're remembered, maybe not in the way you hope, but in the way you earned. What are you doing with that responsibility? This world doesn't need more men who shrug off their emotional weight and call it strength. It needs men who are conscious of their imprint, who take seriously the task of being remembered well, not through fear or perfection, but through integrity, humility, presence. So start paying attention to the moments, to her voice, to the weight of your own choices, because whether she ever tells you or not, she remembers, and your greatest accountability may not come from anyone else, but from the version of you that she carries in her heart long after you've gone. Make that version someone worth keeping. Live like you matter, because you do.